This program is brought to you as a public service by Maui Causes. Maui Causes is a crowd-funded media production group that provides media production services to a variety of environmental and progressive causes here in Maui County. Visit us on the web at www.mauicauses.org. Welcome to another edition of Maui Causes. Hi, I'm Sam Small. Thanks to Sleepy John in the studio, and eternal thanks to Akaku for existing in this community so that we have the opportunity to bring to you ideas and information that's kind of different. You know, it's a different slant than what you're going to see, for instance, in the Maui News. The Maui News is presenting a spin on things that consistently supports the business status quo. Whatever name you want to put to that, the good old boy system, the money, the big money interests, the plantation families, and those corporations, multinational corporations that have grown out of those historic family business interests. All of that entrenched exploitation, because it is exploitation. Let's call it for what it is. By virtue of the taking over of the Hawaiian monarchy and putting the state of Hawaii into the hands of business interests over 125 years ago, that is a solid level of control that permeates every aspect of our society, from the banking system to the court system to our politics, both at the state level and here in Maui County. Business interests control what's going on. It's been happening for decades. And never was there a time that it was more important to bring in fresh blood, to not allow people that have been running this county for decades. Historic families that have had essentially they have handcrafted the system of loopholes and exploitation, dysfunction that is currently existing here in Maui County. We have a situation where the county can hardly do any capital improvement project because doing a capital improvement project will trigger legal mechanisms that will expose past corruptions. So the county is paralyzed. Infrastructure is paralyzed because everything that they try and do, as I said, will expose some level of past corruption. They have boxed themselves in. And it is showing itself now in McKenna. If you look at the issues around development out there, a project that is on the fire, every aspect of that is showing you, if you look at it, can show you where and how this system is dysfunctional and rigged. It's been exploited for decades, and they have been now covering up that exploitation. There are cases in federal court that show that directors and corporation counsel are lying. Council members know, they've been informed that corporation counsel is lying. We have a history here in Maui County of corporation counsel defending faulty directors' decisions and losing those cases in court. Why does that persist? It persists because they are desperately trying to cover up corruption. There were maybe just a small few that perpetrated fraud, but fraud was perpetrated and it's being covered up. And our system today is paralyzed. There are reasons for that. They want that chaos because it allows them to continue to pull off these shenanigans. The Upcountry water bill is a perfect example of that. 2015, Gladys Baisha pioneered a bill that was supposed to help families on the Upcountry water meter wait list. Instead, Corporation Counsel made sure that the exemption that for roadway improvements that got created in the Upcountry water bill got applied to developers island-wide. A and B got a roadway development exemption so that you will pay the fees for roadway improvements when they develop a 1,200-acre lot across from the King Cathedral Church on Punene and Dairy Road, all the way out to the light running south. You're going to pay for their roadway improvements because Corporation Council slipped language in under everybody's noses. All of the council members say that they didn't realize what was going on. At what point do we stop tolerating this negligence? At what point do we demand that these council members, all of them, actually pay attention to what's going on? Instead of, it's a complicated job. There's no question about it. It only becomes easy if you're being told what to do. But if you are actually diving in and paying attention to what's going on, it takes a lot of time. And I'm so appreciative of the younger people that are coming up and offering their services as council members because they've got a fresh perspective. They're not tied to the good old boy system. They're not tied to this dysfunctional county system that has developed over the decades. You know, council members that have been there for years and whose parents actually helped create the system. Ricky Hokama's father for 40 years, created the system that we have today. And Ricky has done nothing to change the system or modernize the system. He just simply pays attention to the budget and nitpicks and does a job, does a service on that issue, but has done nothing to change the systemic problems. They tolerate the systemic problems, and that's why new blood is absolutely so necessary here in Maui County. Alan Arakawa, as mayor, has been exploiting these things. His administration is defending faulty county decisions in court that should not be defended. Corporation Council is even spending your tax dollars defending themselves, Corporation Council and the mayor, in legal proceedings where public money should not be used. This is a lesson that was learned in Watergate. Howard Dean just came forward and talked about it in terms of Donald Trump. That they cannot be using public money to defend the actions of office holders. That's what was learned in Watergate. Howard Dean explained just recently in comments that the Bar Association reaffirmed the fact that the government's lawyers are responsible to the office. They are not responsible to the office holder. Corporation Council works for you, not Alan Arakawa. But that's not the way things have been going lately. The mayor's office controls Corporation Council, or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's Corporation Council is controlling the mayor's office. Either way, our system is broken. 2016, you voted for a charter amendment to allow the county council to get independent attorneys' opinions, and that has not been actualized. Corporation Council has blocked that process. The council members are hogtied. They can't do their job. So many of our infrastructure systems related to land development are so severely broken they need to be fixed, and only fresh blood in this election has expressed any willingness to fix these issues. And that's why we bring candidates to you who represent this fresh perspective and an understanding that our system is dysfunctional, it needs to be restructured, and they have the political will to do it. And if you elect enough of them, they will have the majority, and they will be able to get the job done for you to protect your island from exploitation, to protect your children's best interests, so that they can have a life here in Maui County, and so that Maui County does not get built out 100% and become Oahu. That's what's at stake in this election. We need fresh blood. We need people like Alice Lee to not come back onto the county council. There's no role for her in the county council anymore. There's no role for Ricky Hokama on the county council anymore. Mike Molina is part of Alan Arakawa's machine. There's no room on the county council for either one of them. And only your participation in the vote will change any of this. You need to educate yourself on the issues, and you need to accept candidates like Trinette Furtado, who is dedicated to your best interests, the people's best interests, and is already doing the job to try and support you and your family's best interests, as opposed to the exclusive benefit to corporate interests, the way things have been for decades here in Maui County. So, enough of me chatting. On the show with me today to represent the fresh blood that we so desperately need is Gabe Johnson, County Council candidate from Lanai. Gabe, thank you so much.
Well, Sam, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for putting your neck on the block. It's not an easy thing running for county council, is it?
Well, I'll agree it's not easy, but it's definitely, I got the fire in my belly. I want to do it. You know, we were just talking about a little bit earlier, like the sacrifices you do as a candidate. You know, you give up a lot of your privacy. You become very public. Your life is very public.
Sure. Everything you say gets scrutinized.
So, I mean, yeah, there's a cost.
Which is the good news and the bad news.
Exactly.
You know, because from my perspective, that's a great thing, because I want these issues to be brought to the fore.
Right.
You know, there are candidates that don't want to talk about any of this stuff.
Right, so it should be very reflective. You know, I go door to door quite often, and people tell me about their issues, and I always kind of joke, it's like payrolls and potholes. That's all we ever want to talk about. You know, because that's an issue that affects every person on island. You know, the traffic, the cost of living, you know, your taxes. Those are universal. So I am a populist guy at heart. You know, I believe in that messaging that what's good for the common good of all is going to help everybody, and that's the best way to run a government, local government, I should say. And it's really important that local families have a say in their local government. That's how it should be. So, in regards to what you were saying earlier, the solution is right in front of us. You just got to get out and vote. You know, I threw my name in the hat, and I don't want to agree. I don't agree with Alan Arakawa for saying no vote, no grumble. I'm saying no. Let's inspire the electorate. Let's get people excited to vote. So I'm on your show today to kind of, you know, shake the tree. Like, let's get people to the polls. Let's talk about issues that affect them.
Yes.
You know, and that's how we really kind of talk about real change. You know, that's important to me, I think, as to everybody. Right? It's you want to have. Nobody likes traffic. You know, nobody wants to deal with the lack of infrastructure we have. It seems like the county is willing to build infrastructure for tourism and the industry, but they're not willing to build for us, the common folk.
Right.
And I think that's why I'm out here trying to get my message out that if, you know, get me elected and we're going to pivot. We're going to talk about building things for the working class, the middle class, local families, Hawaiians, people been here for years, our kapuna, our keiki. You know, the overall community needs to be focused on by our local government.
Well, and you know, the problem that I have with the corruption that we have is that it so much allows resources, financial resources, to be drained out of the county. Yeah. There's a lot of money in Maui County. I kept expecting for a long time for the county to run out of money. Yeah. You know, but that doesn't happen because there is plenty of money, and there's so much money that the system continues to operate even with money being drained out the bottom.
That's
the
right.
way that it is so expressly. And if we plug that, then there will be money for the community resources that you're talking about.
I have to answer that question almost all the time I do an interview is, well, those are great programs such as increasing the bus services or, you know, helping out some infrastructure for healthcare. Those are all great plans, but where are you going to come up with the money? I hear that question all the time.
Right.
And I'm going to push back and say there is money in the county. It's just we don't focus on helping out infrastructures and programs for our residents. We help build a rent-a-car garage for tourism industry. I mean, that shows where your emphasis is, you know. And I'm a people guy, you know. I'm a people-first guy. I think that's what my emphasis is going to be.
Well, and you know, I've talked on this show many times about the infrastructure issues, the 3-lot or less deferral system, hundreds of millions of dollars, taxpayers' dollars that got diverted to pay for developers' responsibilities. And the county council, under the control of this existing system, has refused to deal with the issue. It's a quagmire. They are paralyzed dealing with these issues, and this is why, you know, the fresh blood that you represent. Yeah. If we can get a majority of council members in there who have an understanding that our system is broken and it needs to be fixed for the benefit of the people, then you know we have a chance, and that's really, you know, what is inspiring about this electoral season, that we have so many candidates, you know, who can do the job.
Yeah, let me add to that. It's one important point that nobody really has been talking about, is that this is the second year in a row that every seat on the Maui County Council has a challenger. That never happens. For years and years, it's just we have a political movement, a people's movement that's uprising, that we're saying, hey, wait a second. The way you fix it is if you get people, common people, regular people off the street, and get them involved in politics and turn their light on, get them excited about stuff. It's like the old days. From the field, the farmer goes into government, and you pull the farmer out of the field, and they're the boots on the ground. They know what the farmers need. You know, I'm a working class guy. I work in conservation. I work on our watershed all the time. I know what our watershed needs. I deal with invasive species all the time. So we can sit there and just have policymakers talk about policy who's never been in the valleys and the gulches and seen the strawberry guava. They've never seen the watershed being under attack by all these different entities attacking it. So that's why I think you get the farmer out of the field and you put them in local government, and then they go back to farming. You know, this career politicians, these folks have been in government for years and years. If that's your kuleana, if that's what you want to do, then you're a legislator, then write some legislation. Let's see it. You know, show me the money. You know, politics should be a what have you done for me lately kind of business. And if you're the legislator in the county council and you're not writing legislation, you're not working on that, then what are you doing?
Yeah,
you know?
Right. Well, and that's, you know, your opponent in this campaign. That's basically been his track record. You know, it's a family name. His father was deeply involved in the county for decades, and essentially he's just using that bully pulpit, you know, using that position and name to throw his weight around. Doing good service during budget times, you know, and holding the line and trying to rationalize and understand, you know, where the money is being spent, but also, you know, in you know, these issues of where manipulation is taking place. They've done nothing to no interest in stopping the hemorrhaging of money that goes towards developers. And it's not to say, you know, this notion of that, you know, there's nobody saying that development needs to stop.
Right.
You know, development cannot stop. I'm sorry. It's just an economic reality. It's a physical reality. But we have to have development that makes sense. And even this is to the advantage of developers, because our system now is so chaotic. Where a developer comes in and tries to do something, and they get a random response from a county department. Public Works is setting up, you know, a roadway right-of-ways that there's no standardization to any of it. If you look at the properties along Lower Ho'oponopono Road in Kaanapali, for instance, you know, they've got a setback of 58 feet. You know, they got a setback, you know, right next door of 32 feet.
Yeah.
And there's no rhyme or reason for what's going on. There are no standardized plans that the county is following. And that chaos, has developed over decades, and I submit that the chaos benefits the people that are exploiting the system.
Yeah.
And what we need is an analysis, from the community standards down to ensure that we have appropriate guidelines for developers, so that a developer coming in isn't subject to the corrupt system. The developer coming in can sit down and rationally plan and understand what is going to be required of them, and they will gladly do it if you just tell them what they need to do.
Well, if I can add to the idea of development is, we do need development on certain things, and I'm going to say it again, but what is our focus? We need to develop a West Side hospital. That's been that's a development that all the communities are for. But for some reason, we'll build a hotel before we build a hospital.
Right.
We'll build a hotel before we build a Kihei High School. These are the things that people who are taxpayers, they know that deal. We get a lot of criticism for our tax base now. They're only 30% are voting. They're not voting because they're so frustrated with the system. I mean, how hard is it to build a high school and a hospital? People think it's really hard, but you can build a hotel. Boom, boom, boom. Look at the one in McKenna, right? That's one's up and coming immediately. The resorts on Lanai, they get renovated every couple of years, and it's willy-nilly, no problem. But we can't seem to build a hospital or a school. That shows that the emphasis or what we're focusing on is not people-focused.
Right.
So that's a big problem. And the way you fix that is you get people, community leaders, people like myself that have empathy. People forget that I was the county council, or I was a county commissioner on Americans with Disabilities Act for Lanai, where it's not a very not as sexy as affordable housing, but I would go around and make sure that a parking lot stall had handicap accessible ramps and things. I had to make sure the bathrooms are ADA compliant. These are things that show
community needs.
The community needs, and it shows empathy. It shows that hey, I worry about someone in a walker who gets to go to the post office and get a box. It's not a big giant project, but it shows that I care about other people outside my group besides myself.
Right.
And you get people in there like that. That's how you legislate. You start putting yourself in other people's shoes. You can develop islands from the bottom up. If you have a hospital, tourists are going to use that hospital, right?
Sure.
So that's why I think if you start building things more for the residents and the local families, everybody's going to win. That's the populism idea that I'm a strong believer in.
Well, and healthcare on Lanai is a particular issue. I know you've made some statements recently about that.
Yeah. So I wrote a letter to the editor a few months ago to Maui News, and it's basically saying that there was an Ask a Mayor article, and they said, what are we going to do with these dorm rooms right next to Maui Memorial? They're getting run down, and what's the county owns them? What are we going to do with them? So I suggest, why don't we have like a Ronald McDonald House for people who are going to the hospital, or people whose families are you're in the hospital, you're a patient, and your family wants to come stay with you. The women on Lanai, we don't have a birthing center, so women have to go off island to have a baby, and they have to go like a month in advance. So they go to Oahu and they stay in a hotel for a whole month.
Who pays for that?
Well, if they're insured, maybe. But if they're not insured, that's out of your pocket. It's a big expense.
So you can't give birth to a child on Lanai?
Nope, you cannot.
You could home birth.
Well, you could do home birth, and the other route you could do is if you get a midwife and have them come over, and then it gets into the insurance stuff and all that kind of stuff.
And there's no emergency services if anything goes bad.
Right. So that's the thing is if it's a healthy birth, then you bring over a midwife, and it should be everything's okay. If you have any kind of complications, it would be nice to have a place you could stay at Maui Memorial Medical Center right next door. As a father who wants to be close to the woman who's going to have a baby, and He wants to be close. He could stay in there as well. Everybody benefits.
You're talking in Kahului.
Yeah, in Kahului.
The old dormitories that were on the college campus.
Right. That would be such a thing in the county's purview. They say, it's socialized medicine or all this stuff, all these complicated medical systems. The county doesn't have much say in that. But what they do have a say in is, hey, we could build this place, renovate it for members or family members or patients who are going to be getting surgeries done. Or, that's really like for people from Hana, from Molokai, from Lanai, that would help us in our costs, And I think that's something that the county should be able to do. It's right in front of your face. It just takes the political will. It takes that gumption, you got to go out and do it.
Right.
That's a really important issue, I think, for our communities to realize that it's expensive to have children on Lanai. In fact, no one can say they're born and raised on Lanai. They have to go off island. So it's kind of ironic. I work with a lot of people that lived on Lanai for generations, and where were you born? I was born in Oahu. I was born in Maui. I was born here. But no one can really say you born on Lanai, And that's a sense of pride. So if Kaiser, who just took over our hospital, if they're not willing to build a birthing center on our island, then let's have the county get its act together, and build up some dorms, renovate them, and then just let the people who are patients stay in them.
Well, the particulars of those structures are pretty trashed at this point. There's a lot of...
It might be a teardown.
It's probably a teardown. But the space is there. The location is perfect for that kind of application.
It goes back to the idea of we're not short on funds when it comes to building a car garage or a parking lot.
Right.
But we're short on funds. We're helping out women who are giving birth. I mean, come on.
Well, it's all, again, it's this loop. It's this endless loop that there is, no money for those social services because those resources are being sucked out of the county surreptitiously. This Upcountry water bill is just offensive. A giveaway, a secret giveaway to developers that the council members don't even know is taking place, and that the Department of Public Works is deeply committed to continuing issuing roadway exemptions until the council changes the law. The law got passed without anybody reading it. The people that were serving the community on the council dropped the ball, and they've yet really to even address the issue. Don Guzman has actually took a lead in addressing some of these issues, to taking action on several fronts. Kicking the can down the curb, the county council invited the county's independent auditor to look at the historic 3-lot or less deferral agreements to see if they were collectible. The council can do that job. They just don't have the balls to do it because it's a difficult job, and they don't have the political will to stand up to the administration for perpetuating this debacle. And Guzman again stepped forward, and he called for that language from the Upcountry water bill to be removed from the county plan, Title 18, and to remove that exemption because it was achieved inappropriately. It wasn't achieved consistent with what the public understood to be the case. And those kinds of actions put the existing system at risk, and so does anything that is not driven by the needs and desires of a large business interest. There's more to our show in just a moment. This program is brought to you as a public service by Maui Causes. Maui Causes is a crowd-funded media production group that provides media production services to a variety of environmental and progressive causes here in Maui County. Visit us on the web at www.mauicauses.org.
So large businesses have to operate in a moral framework. They have to, and I know people push back on me on that. They say, you're dreaming, that's too idealistic. But what is a contract but a moral agreement? And I think that if we look at the large companies and say, okay, you're the largest landowner, you have plenty of money in the bank. If you're not helping your workers, if you're not helping the communities that you live in, you're actually, it's immoral for you not to do that in the beginning. But the other thing is if you help them, they're going to help you. Worker productivity goes up when we're happy, when we're getting a livable wage, when we own a home. When our middle class expands, the level of people's happiness expands with it. And we're a consumer society, right? You get a little bit of that extra money because you're making good money from these companies that are being morally right.
Right.
Then it goes back to them tenfold. I think it's really frustrating when people say, "Oh, well, that's capitalism. It's a dog-eat-dog world." Where it's of course the corporations are going to be putting their thumb on our local government to get what they want.
That's their job.
That's right.
And in fact, they're bound.
Right.
A corporation's first responsibility is to its shareholders.
Right.
It's actually illegal for a corporation to put the public's interest in front of their shareholders.
So if profits is the only thing that motivates them, realize that it's the middle class that gives you the profits.
Yeah.
If you start building infrastructure for us, if you have a good school in Kihei, if you have a good hospital on the west side, if Lanai has a agricultural park, all these things are going to come back to the communities tenfold.
Right.
You have a well-educated middle class. You have people living healthy lifestyles, and we're growing our own food. These are things that the effects ripple out, and
yes.
it really benefits the whole community across the county.
And that's, people coming in from the mainland really don't understand that they're coming into an oppressed society. By virtue of the takeover and the establishment of a plantation system, Hawaii became an occupied territory. And the Hawaiian culture has been, any culture that has had their language outlawed, is living in a post-traumatic stress syndrome. They're still rising and healing and coming out of that. And the resource that the Hawaiian culture offers to our community to filter that knowledge and understanding back into the official form of the way that we conduct business here in Hawaii is a tremendous asset. We can bring that culture back and institutionalize it back where it's been completely disregarded and completely subverted, and that is what has gotten us to this exploitative system that we have today. Yeah. It's here on our own front lawn. It's here right in front of us to be able to bring that cultural aspects back into the official form of our society. Yeah. The Ahamoku system is a great way to look at that and bringing that with even more authority. Aspects of the sand mining is a perfect example.
Oh, that's a great example.
Because the sand mine, who would have guessed that sand would have become a worldwide global commodity worth people doing terrible things to get? Yeah.
There's a certain amount of transactionality I can speak to that on. It's like my mother's Okinawan, my father's Puerto Rican. So these are both island communities that have suffered under exploitation. Let's take your culture and throw it on a postcard. And then there you go. You're
relegated to a postcard.
That's all you get.
That's right.
And I see how Hawaiians have suffered under the same kind of institutions that affect Puerto Rico, that affect Okinawa.
Yep.
And it's to add to that, there's a lot of people in Maui County that have Okinawa ancestry or Puerto Rican ancestry.
Sure. Because mixed blood everywhere.
Right. So I really feel where it comes from. Like I know that the histories of Okinawa, Puerto Rico, and Hawaii all suffer under imperialism and the idea of the exploit the communities, exploit the culture, exploit the natural resources.
Right.
So I understand that, and I think that we can look at the government that's way out in DC and ask them to do this or that, but I would push back and say, well, let's look at our local government. What are they doing to help us with these issues that Hawaiians have? I know everybody will say, oh, that's a federal thing. Well, you can't tell me that local government doesn't affect Hawaiians.
Absolutely.
It does. So we got to push back and make sure that the county's doing things for helping out our indigenous folk. It's really important.
Are there other issues in Lanai that the rest of the county needs to know about and that you can help solve?
So a lot of the issues that Lanai has, is the same that Maui County has, that Molokai has, Maui has. The standard is keep it country, right? We hear that all the time. Well, if I go to Molokai and I go door to door and I say, hey, keep it country, they get that message. They understand. So Molokai's message of keep it country is the same as Lanai's message is keep it country. And the same, there's areas in Maui that really are fighting that against the constant barrage of tourism and a certain amount of impacts that tourism has on your country lifestyle.
Well, we also have now urban sprawl. That is happening here in Maui County.
Right.
That's where it's going. There's all these little pockets of developments that are popping up. Pukalani and just above Pukalani is an example of that. And it changes, it does. It changes the overall flow and texture of the community.
Right. And I get where you're coming from, where there's certain communities you could feel like they're under attack from development. And I think sometimes we lump in development. When we talked a little bit about this, like all development's bad. That's not true.
No, it's not
so
true.
There are certain areas. Like if you're going to tell me you're going to do a 50 home affordable housing project, and let's talk about that. Let's find a good spot for it where it doesn't impact the country or the open space. Maybe there is a place that would hold this much better. And as long as we keep it country on this side, maybe this section was an old field of sugarcane. There's certain things that you're going to put the round peg in the round hole, right? Or you got to make sure that the community agrees. And the way you look at that is through the community plans. A lot of community plans have already said this is where we want to protect ourselves from urban sprawl, like you're saying. The community plans, Lanai finished its community plan. There's other communities that are working on theirs. That is the grassroots of like local people's involvement in their government. So I think community plans are a great way to protect from urban sprawl.
And the community plan for Lanai went down in that airplane crash?
Yeah, that was tragic. Yeah.
So a lot of those resources were lost.
Yeah, I don't know all the details of it, I'll be honest. But I know we're finished with the plan, so it passed and went through, and I just think that we just got to follow it. There's certain pull, people tug and pull at your community plan, and
well, I think that's perhaps one of the reasons that the community did not support Don Couch in this last election, because Don Couch single-handedly eviscerated the community plan process by simply saying, which I believe, completely inappropriately and perhaps illegally, that the community plan did not have the force of law. Where it's my understanding those plans do have the force of law.
I think he was trying to make it where it was just more of a recommendation. And I think that's
not what the charter
says. Such a slap in the face of all the folks in all the towns in the communities who've worked hard.
Right.
I mean, the community plans are massive undertakings,
It's a massive
right?
undertaking.
So you figure after all those years of work, they're going to say
disenfranchise the community
it's just
even
a
more.
recommendation.
That's right.
That's what happens, when you get politicians and people who are in power that aren't listening to their voters.
Right.
You got to reflect your voters' wishes. That's the whole point of democracy. It's really important that the wind in your sails, the wind is the people's voice. You know what I'm saying? That's really that. When people forget that, that's when you vote them out.
Right. And that is the movement that we see here. That the community is not supporting these historic candidates, the people that have been in there for decades and controlling things. The community does seem to want the kind of change that you represent and the kind of progressive ideas to restore the balance back into our society here.
I guess the only thing I can add to that is I believe that when elected, that I will work with, you know, the other council members. Like a lot of times we get, they're fighting, you know, but part of that is hey, democracy is messy. You know, you're supposed to have a back and forth. I want that vigorous debate. You know, I want to be able to be like, well, you say this and I say that. Well, let's, you know, kind of whittle it down and get really down on what we're talking about. And then we can talk about compromise. But there's certain things that I stand on that I just, it's in my gut. I'll vote no or I'll vote yes, and I just stand on that vote. You know, we shouldn't be afraid for council members to have a robust discussion. You know, when you get personal, I agree. You know, let's not get personal.
No, it shouldn't get. There's no
but
need
let's
for it.
have that back and forth, that debate. You know, I don't get offended when someone doesn't agree with me, and they don't get to clutch their pearls when I disagree with them.
Right.
You know, that's how things get hashed out. You know.
And politics is a very interesting thing because you end up, you know, having negotiations and horse trading with other politicians to get things done. I don't know that I would be good at that because it's too hard for me to accept those givebacks that are sometimes very bitter pills to swallow. And it's one of the reasons that I think term limits are so very important, because if you're there long enough, the politics changes you.
Yeah.
And you become part of an entrenched and established system. And that's what this show is dedicated towards disrupting, being a positive disruption in that established system. It's a necessary ingredient in a free democracy.
All concentrations of power need to be questioned. That's what it's all about. So I'm not saying it has to be dismantled, but we do got to question it and make sure that, are you legitimate? Is your power legitimate?
Very good, very good. What other what things have you learned in the campaigning process? It's not easy running for office.
It's not easy. I'll concede it's not easy, but I really do love it. I don't know. I think you created a monster. What I love is going door to door.
Yeah. That is kind of the exciting part, to meet so many people on their turf. And
it really is, because then you find out that somebody who I think might not have anything in common, we do have something in common, and finding that common ground and talking story and hearing them out. And it turns out, like we were talking about a little bit about this earlier, your issue here in Lahainaluna or Haile Maile or wherever we're at is the same issue as the Lanai City has. You know, the same issue Molokai has. You know, there's a lot of common ground that we can focus on. So going door to door, you know, I just give them the mic. Hey, what's on your mind? And they'll talk and they'll tell me these things, and I'll hear about them. Their issues, their concerns. They're concerned about their kids' future. They're concerned about their mortgage. They're concerned about traffic, their health care. These are things that everybody has an issue with. So I like that part about the campaign. It's going around and hearing people's story. You know, that's really important to me. That part of the campaign I like. Sometimes I feel like the news media doesn't really give me the coverage that, you know, they're not really There's a movement here. This news, man, that's something that needs to be talked about. But a lot of times they won't. I don't know why they won't want to talk about me and Ricky. I don't know if they're. I'm not going to assume. I just want them to, you know, get out there and report and talk about what's happening. There's something going on here that Maui County should be aware of. Their voters should be aware about. Their readers should be aware about. Those are things that they're important to people, and the news media should be singing that at the top of the trees.
Well, you know, the Maui News as a publication really is a propaganda machine. You know, when they print articles and they talk about unnamed sources, or you know, I've seen many times, even in their headlines, and especially in their headlines, that, you know, they'll say something like, the county council is considering such and such, which some people think is a problem. And you read the article, and nowhere do they ever even explain who those some people are.
Yeah.
That's an editorialization. That's a spin that does not deserve to be in a headline.
Right.
that, they can save that stuff for their opinion in their editorial page, but as a community, it is a total disservice to print that kind of spin in the article itself. Journalism has standards, and they violate those standards on a regular basis when it's convenient and it's important to propping up the status quo. And anything that you represent a challenge to the status quo. And we welcome you, and we welcome that challenge. But other media sources here in Maui County absolutely do not. They don't want this discussion to be taking place. And it's challenging, because some of the issues, for existing county council members, it's a challenge. Getting reelected is a very different thing than getting elected the first time.
Yeah, that's true.
You're subject to a whole different level of scrutiny and issues when you're trying to get reelected. And again, term limits, I think, helps invigorate the whole discussion, because people will do really weird stuff to get reelected. That's what I'm seeing, and it's very scary, actually, to me, that what people will do to get reelected. So we welcome, you as that fresh blood and the opportunity to create these kinds of changes here in Maui County. What else should voters know about you? Of course, everybody, you realize that regardless of where you live in Maui County, you do get to vote for all 9 county council candidates. So you do have the opportunity to vote for Gabe Johnson here. Everybody in Maui County gets to vote for all of the different communities.
That's right. In 2016 election, I was looking over it. I think there was 4,000 blank votes.
Blank votes are a problem.
So you went to the polls, you voted, you just didn't click all the boxes in the county council. And everybody, if you have that right, you might as well, fill it all out. If I could just get more of the people who went and didn't vote, if I could get them to vote, then that would have turned the election right there in 2016.
In 2016.
Right. So in this year, I'm encouraging everyone to vote. Get out there and exercise your right. I don't believe in don't vote, don't grumble. I believe in, hey, it's my job as a candidate to get you excited to go out and vote. So you might see me walking door to door in the heat, but that's because the fire's in my belly. I want to kind of tell everybody, hey, this is a chance. This is a chance where the government will reflect your views. We'll turn around and say, hey, instead of standing in the doorway of City Hall, as they say, we're going to be out there turning around saying, what's on your mind? What can the county do for you? I know everybody talks about affordable housing. Man, we've been talking about affordable housing for 20 years. You can talk about it, but it has to be built.
It never gets built because it's part of the giveaway that they give to developers. Yeah. It's part of this way that our system is exploited in land development. Mm-hmm. It's one of the largest issues of areas of corruption.
Right.
The council. The Planning Commission has an inappropriate level of authority. The mayor's political appointees, that whole process. There's so many issues, structural issues of how the county gets managed that need to change. The professional town manager is a great opportunity to restructure and have that discussion of changing the structure of how our government is run.
That's right.
Issues of corporation council is a massive thing. That's why I frequently repeat how we as a county voted in 2016 to get the county council an independent legal opinion separate from corporation council, because corporation council does not represent has not been representing the people that way. They're in conflict, and that's something that needs to be dealt with on the county level. A professional town manager could heal that situation.
I believe in a professional town manager. I think it's a good call. If you look across other counties, states, municipalities, that's a common thing. It happens. It's not so far extreme, in Maui County so out there in left field. It's a common practice in similar sized places like ours and larger places like ours, it can work. I think it's just a matter, we go back to this again, it's just a matter of, do you really want it? Is there a political will for it? If it's just, the strong mayor style government, well, get ready for cronyism, get ready for, the idea of patronage, getting ready, for those kind of old school ideas. And I don't think that has been servicing our county for 40 years. That's the way it's been doing. It hasn't been working out that well because of all these things that you mentioned before. So try some new ideas that we're not reinventing the wheel here. It's a common practice in other communities. I think it's a doable thing. We can at least look at it.
Sure.
Let's talk about it. Let's again have that vigorous debate, that back and forth.
Well, there's lots of aspects that are used for managing a municipality of this size, where other municipalities have best practices. They have ways of doing things. There are companies, service companies, that can assist, for instance, in developing an assessment district, rather than giving infrastructure development exemptions to developers. Communities collect instead a fee in lieu. They collect an amount up front. Maybe there's even a bond put on it, and it's assessed up front. The developer has an ability to understand what's required of them, build it into the system from the beginning, and they'll gladly participate if that's what it takes to get their project done smoothly.
Right.
Instead, we have chaos. Every project is different. Every project is subject to the whims of a politically appointed director who is not expressing standardized opinions. It's chaos.
Well, the only thing I can add to that is one of my suggestions for affordable housing crisis is that you get involved with Habitat for Humanity as well as AmeriCorps. These
proven organizations,
nationally, internationally organizations that are like one example for Habitat for Humanity, they do something called a housing blitz. A housing blitz is we're going to build you 100 homes in 2 weeks. It's like, what? That's crazy.
Right.
So that's what they do. They go into the community and they build 100 homes in 2 weeks. And you might be thinking, oh, that's someplace off in the middle of a foreign country. No, they do it on the mainland all the time.
Right.
So, I did a little research. I did the Google Earth, and I wanted to see, because this program has been going on for about 10 years right now. So I said, let me see what these homes look like 10 years later after I built these 100 homes in 2 weeks. I did the Google Earth search. You can go on Street View, and it's a little community, little town, little neighborhood. It's not like a big old ghetto, or it's not, crappy houses. It's really high, nice working class homes with tree-lined streets. Nothing bad ever happened. The economy didn't crash. Now 100 people who didn't have homes now have homes.
And they take pride in their homes because they help build them.
Right, and that's such. Once you start taking the profits out of home building,
right,
then you can really get into like workforce housing for the middle class. Economic systems from the bottom up is the way to do it.
That is the role of government.
Right.
Is to find a way to take the profits out of low-income housing.
Mm-hmm. So I think there is a way to do it. It's just we got to have the will to do it.
We've got just a few minutes left. What else would you like the county voters to know about Gabe Johnson?
Well, I didn't talk too much about my job. I work in conservation. I work as invasive species tech on Lanai. I go and hike the mountain, and I do a lot of work on the watershed, protecting the birds, the seabirds. I do a lot of biosecurity when the barge comes in. Mm-hmm. So when
inspections for invasive species.
The coqui frogs, the fire ants, all that kind of stuff.
Does stuff pop up? I mean, do you find snakes and stuff?
Knock on wood, no snakes yet. But I heard there was a skunk caught in Oahu. A skunk.
A skunk was actually
now we don't
caught?
have rabies in this state, and I think that invites the discussion.
Sure.
What are we going to do with our biosecurity plan? The county should be doing some kind of biosecurity screen that gets stuff back, gets the invasive species out of there. And the problem, the debate is, well, then you're going to slow down the economy, because instead of the stuff coming off the barge and right into the truck and right to the Lowe's or right to the store, it's going to slow it down and say, it's going to give me an hour to look this over, give me some quarantine time.
Yeah.
Because
whoever is bringing the items in, they pay for that quarantine storage.
So I think the balance is you might slow down the process just a little bit, but think of the money that we spend on coqui frog eradication. Think of the money that we spend on rat lungworm disease and what it's doing to our local farmers. Guys who are growing lettuce in their farms, and we tell them buy local, sell local, buy local, all that stuff, and then rat lungworm comes out, it just kills the economy.
Suddenly people stop eating salads.
So it's just, it might take a little bit longer for your goods to get off the barge and into the store, but the money we save by having a good biosecurity plan, you end up saving money in the long run. I think that when I get into the council, I will really want to kind of push our efforts with MISC, the Maui Invasive Species Commission, and have them expand and expand their budgets, expand their people, and then really have like that green collar kind of come out and really work our economy in the green collar way.
Right. Sweet. Well, Gabe, thank you very much for coming on the show.
My pleasure,
Thank you
Sam.
for your willingness to put, as I say, your neck on the block. It's a challenge. It's a big responsibility to be a county council member, and we so appreciate your willingness to step up to the plate and take that responsibility in service to the entire community.
Well, thanks. I got 19,000 votes in 2016 when I ran.
Yeah, that was a good showing.
I was really humbled by the amount of support I had. So this time I'm going to go again, and I really just tell 10 of your friends and have them tell 10 of your friends, and that's how it'll happen. Grassroots from the bottom up. I really believe it.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Gabe Johnson running for county council from Lanai. You get to vote for him regardless of where you live in Maui County. Vote for all 9 county council candidates. I'm Sam Small. This is Maui Causes. Thanks for watching. Join us again. This program is brought to you as a public service by Maui Causes. Maui Causes is a crowd-funded media production group that provides media production services to a variety of environmental and progressive causes here in Maui County. Visit us on the web at www.mauicauses.org.